right, we will go ahead and begin this evening, and we'll begin with roll call.
Rob Keller.
Here.
Tom Kramer. Deb Metzger.
Here.
Tim Mills.
Here.
Mac Rankin.
Here.
Ryan Merlin. Here. Sue Wilson.
Here.
Right, and then we'll move on to the good news section.
Okay, several different things in there this time. Had some pictures from the Emerson Food Pantry and a fundraiser they had done. They were able to totally fill up their pantry shelves, as you can see there. I had some pictures from 8th grade Constitution learning. They were looking at original source documents and then kind of role-playing different constitutional folks. I had a picture in there from Lauren Goes Wilder. They did a Macy's Day Parade around Thanksgiving time, learned about the Macy's Day Parade and created their own little floats and walked. There's also a little article in there about Irving and helping hand donations that they raised. I noticed the picture got misplaced. It's at the end, not with the article. But Irving enjoyed doing that, getting some donations for Helping Hand. A couple of pictures of Peer PE right before Christmas break, enjoying their holiday sweaters and games. And Peer PE is kind of a neat thing that partners up special needs students and general education students and has them do team games and things. There's a list of students there that made Meister Singer Honor Choir. That's at Wartburg College, a good opportunity for them. I put a picture in of a cappella choir. Each year they come and sing at Rotary just prior to the Christmas holiday, and that's, I know for a lot of those Rotarians, that's the highlight program of the year. They always do such a nice job. And then we have some 8th grade team pride awards that I put in there as well. That's what I have for this time around.
Any board member reports? Sorry.
I just wanted to say it was parent preview night for show choir on last Thursday, and they had the 7th grade, the 8th grade, and then both of the high school programs there. And it was so neat. Like the high school crew cheered on those 7th and 8th graders, like their hearts depended on it. And I don't know, it was really neat. And I think it was just a very uplifting night. And the new auditorium looked great being in there, and the sound was great. And so I just wanted to make sure that all the show choir employees we have, I know how much time they put in, and it was awesome. And the kids were all awesome, and I don't know, they should all look forward to a good season because they did a really nice job.
That's good. Anyone else?
Since our last meeting, I was able to visit Emerson Elementary right before break, and it was really good to get into that school and visit with everybody. And I wanted to share with you guys that Mr. Timmerman was all dressed up and had his guitar out when I was there. They were making the rounds and singing songs, so that was kind of neat to be a part of, and kudos to him for being engaged with the classes.
Anyone else? I had the opportunity on Friday to go and do a special speaker in the personal finance classes over at the high school. So I had 4 of those classes, and with Mr. Rogers, and he does an incredible job. I'll try to email you guys all the a photo he sent me. So he has a vocabulary wall, and it is every term that would be new to all of those students. And it's mainly sophomore through seniors. I think mainly juniors and seniors, and then the sophomores maybe as well. But it's loaded like it's a gigantic blackboard. So it'd be like everything we're used to, the blackboards and stuff, not whiteboards. So he has it in chalk, and he writes them up as he goes throughout the semester and as he's teaching throughout the semester, and just keeps loading it with more and more terms. And so I had asked him how the kids were doing and stuff. It was a great class. It was really wonderful. But I was asking him how the kids were doing, and they take this WISE test at the beginning of the semester, and then at the end of the semester, just kind of see gauge where they're at. He said students' average scores increased from 44% starting the semester up to 76% at the end of the semester on anything related to personal finance there. 74 of 96 students received a certificate from the test saying that they actually passed, so that's good. And then every student's score improved from the pre-test to the post-test. So maybe they had like a really low knowledge base of what, anything there. But all the kids across the board increased. And I asked him like, hey, what would you say your greatest successes from this past semester? And he said, my greatest classroom success this past semester involves the real world of personal finance. Seeing students' reactions when they understand material or see something in class that relates to their real lives. I'm very fortunate to teach such a great class at Indianola, and I'm very thankful for that. So that's from Mr. Rogers. So it was a really good class there. It was fun. It was fun to be in there and stuff. So, but I realized once I got to the third class, I was like, wait a minute, did I already say this to this class? Or did I say that to that class? And I was like, I don't know. I had asked somebody about it, and they were like, "Oh, that's an art. You gotta do that's an art to try to remember that kind of stuff." So that is the board member reports. Any communications or
Anybody sign up to speak tonight, John, or not?
Nothing. Okay. So we'll move on to the cassette agenda.
You did have some updated personnel recommendations at your place there. The highlighted ones are the ones that were added after the packet came out. And then John put a copy of the contract, which was in the agenda, but the contract item was on the agenda, but the actual text of it was not in the packet yet by the time we posted. So
Basically, what I had done is I usually, it's common practice for us to send our contracts to our lawyer, and that's not what they're used to. So when I sent it back, they went, oh. So it took a while, and then over the weekend, I don't know if you heard me say that the president of the company passed away. So that all threw everything in, so I got this afternoon. So what you see is what includes what the lawyers had added in there. I mean, I think it protects both sides. It just does.
We just need a vote for the consent agenda.
Make a motion that we approve the consent agenda.
A motion made by Sue to approve, seconded by Tim. Any further discussion by board members? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries 7-0. Next are the presentations.
we have Mrs. Baker tonight for a special education program review. Yep, go ahead, step right to the mic, please.
I feel bad, I just walked in and I budged right in front of Jeff.
It's perfect timing. Let's be happy he didn't trip you.
My name is Deb Baker and I'm the Director of Special Programs. But I'm here tonight to talk mainly about special education. But I know there's some new faces tonight, so I just thought I would start with just kind of some nuts and bolts of special education in Indianola. In your packet tonight, I included I call it an insight sheet. I use this with our new teachers this year just to talk a little bit about special education. And it kind of has a snapshot of each building in the district. So you can kind of see if there's different programmings at different school, the number of teachers we have in special education, the number of associates. Also on that sheet, I know there's acronyms on here, but one of the big ones last year was the acronym RRG means if we return kids to regular ed. So last year through special education, or through the special education process, we returned 22 students to regular ed. We also brought in $572,000 in Medicaid billing. There's also some information about professional development on there, but I'll get to that a little bit later in the presentation. And the next slide.
Is there a way
Yeah.
you can get a copy of what you just, that sheet you just had handed up?
It's at the, if you scroll down, right? It's in there. It's
No,
in
no,
there.
I know, mine doesn't work. But-
What's that?
You just want real paper.
Yeah, next time I'll just get real paper.
Okay.
I like to make mention of,
real
no,
paper?
you're good.
Yep, okay. So I told you tonight I was primarily here to talk about special education, but I also work as the homeless liaison for the district. I work with homeschooling and then a little bit with at-risk as well. The next slide. One of the big things in special education is we look at our numbers a lot. We have students that are identified as level 1, level 2, or level 3. And then in October, we do do a certified count of those numbers, which is a little bit different than like the general education count. We've had some growth in special education this last year, actually for the last 3 years. Specifically last year, we went from 430 students identified in the district to 478. Looking at numbers, we would find that most of those came in our like 3-5 population. We had kind of a surge in that area with our preschool through kindergarten. And that actually put us a little bit ahead of the state as far as identification rates. Our 621 population, we actually went down a little bit as far as the percentage of kids that we've identified. As a district, we're at 11.79% of our enrollment is identified. In the states, it's about 13. So just some comparison there. And then just some data looking at a couple of other districts. I pulled some data from Norwalk and Carlisle and just kind of compares our district to the different, and with different numbers, I guess, compared to in different areas. So one of the things that is up there is it talks about a range. We have a range that we've decided for an appropriate roster in Indianola. And so an example would be like our range for Strat 2 teachers is a roster of between 8 to 12, whereas in Norwalk it's 6 to 9. But if you look at our average number of students on those rosters, we sit at about 8.2. So just something that you can go back to, but I thought I would include that in there. So that's kind of just some like a quick and dirty data about special ed in Indianola. And then I thought I'd start talking about some recent improvements we've been working on. When I started this position, the first thing we did was start a program review. And we worked with the AEA assessment consultant to look at our data and kind of pull a bunch of information together. From there, we kind of learned, we really learned that our special education students weren't closing the gap as quickly as we wanted them to. And so from there, we had to make some decisions. And so the first thing we did is we revamped our special education service delivery plan, and that was approved by the board last summer. And then we've also from there have kind of a renewed focus on professional development, more specific to special ed teachers. So I just want to kind of outline some of the things that we've been working on. And during that pre-service week in August, when we met as a special ed department, we talked about the service delivery plan, made sure the special ed teachers had a good sense of the information that was in there. And that's really just how we do business in Indianola, how we make our rosters, how we decide how students are identified. The other thing we talked about this summer was how we add associate minutes to the IEP. That's kind of been an area that maybe hasn't been focused on a lot in the past, and so we spent a lot of time looking at the district forms that we want to look at when we identify that an associate needs to be added to an IEP. So such as like the data collection that needs to happen ahead of time when we observe the students, we want to see what they can do independently and what they need help from an adult with. And then from there, we develop the IEP based on those needs, and we want to make sure that we continue to follow those needs so the students getting the support that they need. And the reason we write that all in IEP, or if we're not following that, we have two issues. One, we're not in compliance, and that's my favorite thing, is to be in compliance and follow the rules. But the second part of that is that then we have some lack of clarity in like the associates, and the teachers don't necessarily know how the students are being supported. So it's really important that we're following that, and so we did some work with some pre-service with the teachers to make sure that we're communicating that with associates and making sure everything looks clean in the IEP. The other big focus this year is looking at professional learning committees or communities. Sometimes that gets kind of talked about as like what we do on Wednesdays, but really it's what we do all the time. In the past, our special ed teachers a lot of times were pulled to grade level team meetings in their buildings, which is appropriate to problem solve and look at data surrounding their students. But we didn't really have time as a group to dig into the individual goals of our students. And so we've started utilizing our district Wednesday, so it's the second Wednesday of every month, to come together as a department and look at each student's individual goal to make sure that they're making progress. And then if students aren't making progress, they have the opportunity to brainstorm with their colleagues. And we also have all of the AEA staff there on those Wednesdays to make sure that if the student's not making progress, we can make some quick instructional changes to get back on track. Thank you, Ray. The other thing that's been a big focus for professional development is the Numeracy Project. We've sent a lot of teachers, or not sent, they've done a lot of virtual training surrounding the Numeracy Project, which is specific to math, and it helps them identify what specific holes students have in their math learning so they can continue with their peers and we can kind of fill those holes that they might have. We've also done work with the Behavior Code. That's a book that was written by Jessica Minahan. She came and spoke to the department last year, and then this year as part of the teachers' individual development plans, they've done book studies around that. And it kind of helps figure out, like, if students have anxiety or behavior needs, what are some things that we can implement to make sure that they're successful. Another focus, we're really busy this year. Another focus we have is has been Medicaid training. We work with Kimberly and Going, and in the summer they came and did a training with all of our teachers, and then worked one-on-one with associates and teachers to make sure that the billing forms that we use for that process are accurate. And through that work, I think it's starting to kind of come together. We're about $77,000 ahead of billing than we were at this time last school year. So I think we're starting to, we're getting more efficient with that. The next thing that we've done for professional development is we have 2 certified trainers in the district for crisis prevention intervention training. We call it CPI training. And that allows us to have in-district people that can train other teachers on those verbal de-escalation techniques and other things to work with students that have escalated behavior. So we have a couple more things. We have a small group of teachers in the district, 6 of them, that work with our students with significant disabilities. We've kind of, through the years, heard that they don't necessarily have the training that they need. So this year we've worked with the ABA, and during all of our professional development days, those teachers work specifically on strategies strategies with those students to make sure that those kids are making progress as well. And then the last thing that kind of just ties everything together is that focus on an instructional match. And I kind of feel like everything we do leads to this, but in addition to all this stuff, we're also making sure we've done inventories of all the intervention materials that our special ed teachers have to make sure that they have access to good materials. And then when students are not making progress, we want to make sure that we're stopping and looking to have the right stuff in place. And so that continues to be a focus. I think that's the biggest leverage point as a special ed department, is to make sure that we're focusing on that instructional match. If we look at some of our data over the last 2 years, in 2019, our special ed third graders were 18% proficient when it came to FAST, which is a pretty small percentage of them, when you think that's over 400 students. And in 2021, we already raised that to 35%. So I think if we continue this work, we're going to start to see some nice improvements. That was kind of a focus on professional development for teachers. We've also continued to put some support in for associates. We looked at our associate guidelines and the training requirements that associates have. And we've made sure that that was all up to date with what the state needed them to have. And then went back and made sure that all of the associates had a chance to get that done. And then in addition to that, some buildings have building-specific training for their associates depending on what their needs are. Emerson had a couple Wednesdays last year where the AEA came in and provided training to the associates just about ways to work with students. I know Laura Ingalls-Wilder did some work with their associates in the summer, and then at the high school, we've done some work with making sure that associates had access to all the materials they needed about their students. So that's my update. We've been very busy.
Any questions for Sarah?
I have a couple questions.
Yeah, go ahead.
Sarah, first of all, I'd like to say thank you for the work that you do and for the SPED associates that are involved in the program, for the work that they do. I've had an opportunity to talk to some of them, and times that work can be challenging. And so I would just ask that you would communicate our appreciation for the hard work that they do in that. One of the questions, I had a child on an IEP, but here's a question that I have. Are IEPs updated based on a timetable or at the parent's discretion or the teacher's discretion?
All of the above are correct. So we have to review IEPs annually, so every year. But at any time, a member of the team member can call an IEP meeting.
Okay.
So it could be the parent, it could be a teacher, it could be another AEA team member that's on there.
Okay. Because that ties into the status that you gave on the progress. So I was curious, is progress identified on a timetable? Is it identified only when, but you answered it every year? It gets
Well, they're progress monitoring continuously.
Well, yes, so we look at progress based on like the standards that our general education students are supposed to be able to, so that would be ongoing and all the time.
Yep.
And then they also have their individual goals, and so sometimes if a student is making progress towards their goal, we would have a meeting and say, we want them to get further, we feel like we can increase that goal, or we might drop that goal
Sure.
as well.
Sure, okay. And then I would love to visit at some point, if it's appropriate, a day in the life of a SPED associate. I'm curious what percentage of their day is spent doing all those different activities that you talked about. I don't know if most of it is spent one-on-one with the child, or if it's spent writing the reports, or what does that look like, I guess is my question. And if that's best seen, a picture's worth 1,000 words, then I would, if it is allowed, I would be game for that, or if you can paint that picture, that would equally be.
It's probably dependent on each associate and what
Yep.
their assignment is.
Sure.
But most of their time should be like with students. There's not a lot of time when they're not with students, because that's what drives their funding and the work that they do.
Okay. Well, thank you.
Any other questions for Sarah?
Really appreciate the focus you've been able to bring to this, and that was, board decision to kind of split that assistant superintendent position into the staff side with HR and the student side with special programs. I really think we're seeing benefits for our kids from that, so I appreciate that.
Thank you, Sarah.
Thanks, sir.
Thank you for setting the bar high for Jeff too here.
It's your turn.
He is here for the high school course handbook. We have student fees, and then he'll be up. Yep.
All right. Next is the 2022-2023 student fees.
Yeah, we usually, every 3 years we have increased it, but again, we're just kind of holding it the same, kind of like we've done with the other things. And, right now, we receive about anywhere from, 200 to 250, 225 if you go to the next. You can see, it's kind of big, so 235,000. So between 225 and 250. So if you say $250,000, when we look at curriculum, the curriculum costs, that doesn't cover it. Right, Annette? Yeah. We're estimating probably each year, probably 400,000. Could be, depending on what the product is or what the curriculum is, it could be as much as 500,000. And we increased that a few years ago because we were kind of behind on some areas. So a few years ago, we really set up a bar to make sure that we're doing that. So you can kind of see the history in that. I try to give you so many years, but this would be the fourth year, which is kind of outside what we've typically done. But I think that financially we can hold it for another year and see where we go. But
As long as it's not going to have a big jump again.
typically we don't. I think it's, if you look, is it $10 or I think it's either $5 or $10 that we go up.
I didn't know if by us waiting it would be a bigger jump.
Yeah.
Okay.
So.
So it is an action
Make a
item.
motion to approve the 2022-2023 student fees.
Motion made by Ben,
Second.
seconded by Matt. Any further discussion by the board? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries 7-0. Next is the 2022-2023 high school course handbook. Which,
So you should have copies of this, the full handbook, and then what I have is just a one sheet of the changes, and these are minor changes, so you would have approved anything major already through your committee work and with Annette. So for our minor changes, first with the language arts, some of that was a name change just for consistency. So we have other courses that we name by a first and a second versus one and advanced. So the first one there was just to sync up with that practice. So we're just consistent throughout. So yearbook 1 and 2 was instead of yearbook and advanced yearbook. So nothing changed in the curriculum there. And then the next two are dealing with prerequisites and what a student would take prior to taking another course. And there was a shift with the AP Lit and Comp. And what I can tell you there, the shift was made because what the English teachers found was that the skills they were obtaining in the prerequisite courses weren't necessary in order to take some of the other AP classes. So those were minor changes there so that students would have access. I believe it was AP Lit and AP Lang as 11th and 12th graders. And it also offers a little more flexibility for a student who's really got a jammed schedule when they're in a lot of the different activities we offer or the arts. So that'll open up the door a little bit for them to take both of those courses if they choose to on the English path. With the social studies, this was just a small thing we added into was the by teacher recommendation for a sophomore to take either sociology or psychology. A couple things here. It opens the door for our students that are younger to take this as a sophomore, so that again, when they're in choir or band and a number of those foreign language courses, it's hard for students to get all these things in when you jam that into just a junior and senior year. So by teacher recommendation, we're opening that door so that students could in fact take those as sophomores, and it's not just restricted to juniors and seniors. So that'll just benefit scheduling and also our students as they progress through high school. With fine arts, this was a change that we had to make based on the DMAC's offerings and what their guidance is on what we should be offering students and what they should be taking. So the music theory 1 and 2 has traditionally been what we've taught every other year. And because of a change in what the colleges are really accepting here, we're moving to offering the music fundamentals course. And again, that's just in replacement of the theory 1 and 2, which are now outdated. And that again was based off of DMAC's guidance. And then in the fine arts, we have a photography 1 and 2 now. We used to have photography and then a digital imaging class. Well, the digital imaging content is now going to be cycled into the photography 2 course. And ultimately, I think what that's done is just really made our content a little more current, where we're offering it and what other schools are doing and what a student would get within the arts if they're going to the college level to go into marketing or any of those things. That they need a better picture of it through photography and how we're covering those skills. So really that was it with the minor changes. I guess, do you have any questions of either those minor ones or anything else in the handbook?
Does DMAC have like an articulation sheet that it communicates with Indianola Community School District that says we accept things that, not necessarily by title only, but that have these items taught in this class? Is that how it works? Or is
So with any DMAC course, we have to follow their syllabus.
Okay.
So our teachers would get that, would have access to that, and we follow the material. We have a little bit of flexibility with how we teach it and the materials we use to teach it, but our teachers teaching DMAC courses teach what the courses are on a DMAC campus.
Quick question. Several of those changes were made to give kids more access, which I think is great. I understand how difficult it gets with their schedules, and then also just more opportunity to take those courses, so I think that's great. The fine arts one with the DMAC change and offering that second semester every other year, are our numbers low enough in that that's not really going to have a big impact on lots of kids? Do we know what the impact's going to be of that? Not that it's really a choice, but I'm just curious.
I think, I mean, right now, I think we would have like 10 kids in the two sections, so we would be able to get every kid through them still. I mean, it's,
So that's really too small a
Yeah.
class to offer efficiently anyway.
And part of that too is that, part of that rationale is, what we had talked about for the DMAC, is that they're no longer going to offer credit for those courses if you're below a sophomore year at college. So our kids wouldn't be able to get that, and that's why this has been shifted over into the music fundamentals piece. So.
Any other questions for Jeff or Nat? This totally doesn't have anything to do with this, but like Project Lead the Way, is that now going to be another DMAC credit again for the spring semester for those kids?
no,
That instructor isn't certified
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
to be able to do that.
When does that happen again? When will that instructor be certified?
She has to have a master's degree along with so many other trainings within that to be approved at those levels. And so that's like even with other courses through foreign language. We had another one recently through agriculture. If that teacher doesn't have that level of licensure, they can't be an instructor that can have that.
so DMAC or the colleges in general kind of dictate whether or not we can offer them for college credit.
Okay.
It's not,
So
we
for the
don't want-
foreseeable future, that's not going to be happening, then?
No.
A credit for those kids? Okay.
No,
Do those families know that?
Yeah,
That's not
we-
going to happen anymore? Like,
well,
not just this year, but for future years too?
it'll be reflected in the course handbook that they are not for DMAC credit now. So last year when we had the change, we had to inform parents that they weren't gonna be for DMAC credit because that's how they were originally advertised in our course handbook. This year they won't be advertised that way. So until we were to have a staff that was certified, we would not enter that back into the course handbook.
Okay. We just need a motion to approve these changes.
Motion to approve the 2022-2023 high school course handbook as requested, changes as requested.
Motion made by Tim. Seconded by Sue. Yeah, Sue. Any further discussion by the board? All those in favor say aye. Any opposed? Motion carries 7-0. Thanks, Jeff.
Thank you, Jeff.
Yeah, thanks.
Take care.
Next is the updated COVID-19 guidance.
There was some communication that came out here pretty recently, and actually, when the CDC changed their isolation guidance from 10 days to 5 days for workers, at the end of 5 days, if workers don't have a fever, then the guidance was that they could come back to work days 6 through 10 and be masked. Mrs. Kelly Meyer communicated that to our staff, and at that time, there was conflicting guidance for schools. CDC still had different guidance for students being a 10-day period, and Iowa Department of Public Health and Warren County Health Services had moved to the 5-day period for students. Probably not 2 days after I sent that out to families, then CDC changed too. And I had one of our district nurses call me last Friday or last Thursday or Friday and say, yeah, CDC is 5 days now too. So different schools have been dealing with this. Norwalk just made a change last night. I did kind of survey conference schools. Dallas Center Grimes is considering it right now. Still has had the 10-day period. Pella, Norwalk, Oskaloosa, Newton, Grinnell, they have all gone to a 5-day isolation period for students as well as staff. And with that, and then also approve that guidance that days 6 through 10 that students should come masked to school. And I bring it back to you just because ever since COVID started, any of the decisions regarding masking or school day, those kind of big fundamental pieces of return to learn I've put in front of the board. So, I guess the other piece for context is it is guidance. From the start, we haven't been able to, or in some cases maybe wanted to, follow every bit of guidance that you get from CDC, for example. We have tried to work very closely with Warren County Health Services from the start. So I guess now with Warren County and Iowa Department of Public Health and CDC all aligning on that 5-day isolation period, I thought I should bring that out here for discussion and possible action by the board, because I didn't really want to communicate to parents now, if your kid has been isolated or has tested positive, is out, it doesn't have to be 10 days anymore. It could be out for 5. They can come back the 6th day, but they have to mask up if we're following the CDC guidance. So I didn't want to make that a unilateral decision, so I'm putting it out here for you to discuss and decide and tell me if you want to make a change or not. If there's no change, then currently we're 5 days for staff, 10 days for kids. So.
I'll just say my stance all along has been get kids in school. I mean, I think we've learned that learning online for most kids is challenging, and the best place they can be is in a classroom for a lot of reasons, both educationally, socially, and anything like that. So if we can cut that time down by 5 days, that's 5 days gained, in my opinion, and I think it's a good thing, and it sounds like the rest of the schools are heading that direction anyway, so.
Any other thoughts from
I like the reduction of days. I do like that. And I agree with Ben on his comments. My question marks come with the parents who would not want their kids to wear a mask for days 6 to 10. So whether they have a medical exemption or religious exemption, whatever that looks like, what is our stance on that? And then along with that, is there any negative repercussions if the sentiment is no, they have to be masked up in order to come back for that final 5 days? Then is their school days negatively affected by that, or is there no negative repercussions due to the 5 days? That additional 5 days is what I'm trying to say. Does the school district look at it and say, well, Johnny or Julie had the opportunity to come back to school after 5 days, but based on the board's approach to this, their parents were not open to that, so therefore there's negative repercussions because they missed out?
No, it would be an either or in the eyes of the school. It would still be, excused absence for a medical reason if the parent chose to go the 10 days versus mask their kid up if the board took that action. So part of that's easier for me to answer. The school district would, there would be no repercussions in terms of that.
I guess my thoughts on the issue, I agree with Ben and Tim both, like getting the kids back into school, that's important to me. The masking, I guess, I feel like we don't need to have anybody monitoring that, I guess. I feel personally we don't need to have the teachers looking to see whether or not they're masking. And in the same way, I guess I feel like at this point there's no reason for anybody besides the attendance office and the nurses to know whether or not a child is out for COVID, that it doesn't need to go any further into the classroom or anyone else. So I know that there's some type of a code that reflects that. I think that, I don't know, I don't agree with that, I guess, being out there. I think that's, I don't think it's anybody's business besides the healthcare professionals there of the district, or maybe the attendance person, to know whether or not a kid had this illness or this illness. It doesn't need to. So I guess if we could take that away, the teachers wouldn't have it as a responsibility to monitor, and administrators wouldn't have a responsibility to monitor. It would be the responsibility of the parents to say, my kid tested positive, this is the school rules to send for 6 to 10, so they make sure that their kid's responsible enough to send the kid back for days 6 through 10. If not, I guess that's my thoughts on it. I don't know what the rest.
I think that I think that that is good guidance. I agree with that.
I don't think it's, when somebody is out with whatever it may be, I don't think it ever needs to go past the attendance office or the nurse, unless it's something that's going to affect classroom structure, but.
Yeah,
we
the
have other-
teacher, I would say right now, whether it's COVID or something else, if there's going to be an extended absence, I mean, the teacher needs to know so they can get work. But I would like to think we're not sharing more details than we need to.
I guess, I mean, that's okay to say that, but it shouldn't be identified as this kid had COVID, I guess, or this student had COVID. I don't think that
people
needs to be
wanna know.
identified in the classroom. What's that?
There might be parents that want to know if there's kids in their class having COVID.
Right, but there might be kids in the classroom that have it that nobody even knows they have
I
it.
know, but gosh, we've had a janitor die, so how many, I mean, where did he get it? From the kids?
I think that may be, is that not against health and HIPAA? I mean, like in what I do, I wasn't allowed, even if we had a kid that had sustained a concussion, I was not allowed to bring that to full gear that a kid, or if we had an athlete that's pregnant, we weren't allowed, I mean, it was, where do we cross that line between private health information?
I would say that's something that the HIPAA has evolved as this pandemic has evolved too, in the approach, and Dr. Worley might have some good insight on this too, but, you know, when we were contact tracing, and in the early stages of this, and we were trying to determine close contact, you know, were you within 6 feet of this person for 15 minutes or more, and all those definitions, and running around trying to determine exposure, HIPAA really kind of was on hold, and there was
That doesn't
more.
make that right.
Well, I'm just talking about the evolution of how it's been treated, and there definitely was more notification, and many districts notifying on the classroom level. Now, what we've put out in our COVID tracker has been school level and just, you know, combined number of student and staff positives. But once the contact tracing was done, and once the community spread was to the point where, I mean, who knows where anybody gets it, because it's, I mean, obviously it's out there and very prevalent. I don't know, anything on any comment on HIPAA and where the school should be?
You're right, when the pandemic kind of began, HIPAA did become something that was so protected and so religious almost to, oh, we're going to have to let that slide now because of this. And it really hasn't really fully recovered in regards to COVID-19, if it will. Which isn't right. I agree it's not right, which is what happened. And so
Don, are you thinking that parents should be informed if a kid?
I know a lot of people that want to know that in the classroom somebody had COVID, or if their teacher had COVID. And I'm sure there's teachers that would like to know if kids in their classroom have COVID. Maybe they have someone at home who's got compromised health situations. I don't know. I mean, there's killed a lot of people. I don't know.
Well, and I think that's one thing to keep in mind, and one thing I always try to wrap my head around is, I've said it numerous times at these board meetings, personally, I have not been too worried about this, but this isn't the Ben Metzger Community School District. It is a district made up of a lot of people, and that's where our decisions need to be wrapped around, and there are some families that, you know, take it seriously and they want to know, or they have underlying health issues. And I think I'm to the point where I'm past mandates, but I don't think we should have to mandate being good people. And the way I look at this is, right now it's 10 days. We're still giving parents a choice. If you want to stay home the full 10 days, we will support you and your student. If you want to come back for 5 days and wear a mask, you can come back in 5 days, but it gets kids back 50% quicker than would be before, and it still leaves the choice on the table for parents who don't want to put a mask on their kid.
And there is responsibility with the parents then, as Rob was saying, and there's trust involved from the school side, because I was a little bit concerned about if we make this change and kids are expected to mask days 6 through 10, you know, how we are going to monitor and enforce that, I was a little concerned about. Partly, teachers would need to know if they were expected to follow it, you know, to enforce that. So we really would be relying on the parents to make that choice Ben's talking about and to be responsible.
I think, remember too, these are asymptomatic positive cases. So half of them are probably false. And the other thing to remember is the transmission of an asymptomatic individual in general is very nil. And that of a child is less than nil. So remember that too. We're talking about asymptomatic positive cases. Not sick people. Not people who are going to pass COVID.
Just if you're still symptomatic, you have to stay home.
Yeah, and yeah, Sue made that point talking to me earlier, that it's no different than any other illness.
Different than
Yeah.
any illness.
You have a fever, you shouldn't be there. You know,
Right,
if you're ill, you shouldn't be there.
That's a different
Yeah.
discussion.
Yeah.
This is asymptomatic test positive.
Or tested positive and had symptoms, but by day 5, you know, no fever, not still sick, I think would still be covered by this too.
It's just, I've taught school a lot of years, and a lot of people send a lot of kids to school sick, with fevers, with whatever. I mean, I'd love to trust everybody and say, yep, they'll do it, but they won't. And I'm sorry to say that, but that is the truth.
Well, that's the same thing like anywhere now. I mean,
I know.
every
I'm just saying.
business
Well, wait,
you
though,
go
I
to,
don't-
you go to the.
I don't really,
Right.
it's up. So they're sick and they stay out for 5 days. On day 6 through 10, if they don't want their kid to wear a mask, then they are staying home for those 4 days. Isn't that how the policy's written right now?
Yeah.
Right?
They're home
So
for 10
it's
days
still a parental decision that, okay, would you like to wear a mask to school today? No. Okay, then you're gonna have to stay home, because right now the policy is you wear a mask for days 6 through 10. If you as a parent don't agree with it, which you all know my stance on this entire thing, and I'm so tired of talking about it, and because I have a view one way, doesn't make me a bad person or a good person. But it is a parent's decision and a kid's decision. And if I decide as a parent, I don't want you in a mask, then we're home for 10 days, right? According to the policy.
That's the beauty of it. It
So
gives parents choice, but for those who want to send their kid back in a mask, it gives them 5 more days in school. which
now,
is
do I think
important.
my kid's name should be all over a teacher report that she's sick and positive with this or that? No, I don't think it's anyone's business, but that's just my take.
Is there any way we can take that down now?
I just wanted to clarify.
Oh, go ahead, Ryan.
But that would be different. You were mentioning that if a kiddo was ill, positive, and then on day 5 felt better, isn't that still 10 days?
If they're fever-free for 24 hours without medication, after that 5 days, they could come
Does it
back.
fall into that too?
Yeah, that's just changed, yep.
Okay.
Yep, which, you know, it's departure. Yep.
But we've had the rule of not send a kid to school if they've had a fever for 24 hours, forever.
Yeah, you're right,
Yes, it's
That's
on
been the
that.
rule forever.
absolutely.
And that might be partially because they're recognizing COVID-19 in teenagers as a cold. So I guess it makes sense that they move to that.
They can't call it.
Yeah, I mean,
Right.
my kids never sent their kids to school until they've been
Their statement that
infect anyone else. I don't know.
Yeah.
Seemed a nice, right thing to do.
Right, right.
I think so, I think that's the reason.
that makes sense.
Right. So is there a way to monitor that at the attendance office level only, or nurse's office level only? Instead of, I'm just thinking, like, why do we?
Now, there's only an attendance office or attendance secretary per se at the high school, a separate secretary. At the other places, it's building secretaries doing it. But I don't know what, I might have to, maybe Mrs. Duran can help me. If I'm a classroom teacher and I bring,
To ask Ray.
I can tell you.
so yeah, so what do they see? What's a classroom teacher see right now in terms of attendance? Do they see a
So they
code?
see a code that's been put in this case, if it's COVID, it would be a queue for quarantine. Now, it doesn't, I think we've talked before, that doesn't have to be just COVID if they're quarantined for any other did introduce with COVID, so. Part of the reason, just so you know why we have that code, why we introduced it, is so we could track that. That was the whole intent to begin with, is track.
It was to be able to track it for.
It was, yeah.
Contact tracing.
Software had to do like Q1, Q2, Q3, Q4, Q5.
Yeah, I mean, we could change it to whatever we want to change it to. I'm a
Or
little-
since we're not needing to track anymore, can't we just do away with the code?
Maybe, and I say that because we may not need to track it for contact tracing, but there might be other programs that rely on that, like federal programs that we rely on.
Or could it just be,
And COVID.
could it be just viewed by the people that need to view it for those purposes then?
There has to, we could look into it. I know there has to be a way to, for sure, we have to be able to mark that absence somehow. And maybe we market it like an extended absence or something, but somewhere we'd have to see if there is a way to still be able to track.
Because I'm assuming.
Whether it was due to COVID or not. I'm just, the only reason I say that is I know we've had like some funding things that have relied on that, even like the parents, I'm probably gonna get this wrong, like EBT.
Oh, yeah.
reimbursement or something.
Yep.
And I don't know if that's still going on, but I know it was one of those things that we weren't kind of tracking. Only at one point, and it was like, oh, shoot, we need this. And so we had to go back and figure out which of these kids were absent for COVID, so it's tricky. But we can certainly look at that, see what options are there.
Do families understand that we're tracking that and sharing that information? I mean, the federal government's getting that information if we're giving it to them for grant purposes.
Right.
And are we sharing that? Are we publicly sharing that we're sharing that information?
Only numbers, only. it's
Just numbers, not individual
No
students.
individual
The only
information.
ones that see those individual students are the teachers. They see a queue. Could infer that it's probably COVID.
I assume that if you got rid of your Q statuses, you would say goodbye to certain funding that comes in because the government would say, well, you don't have any identified COVID cases, so therefore why do you need any such and such funding?
I'd have to check and see if there is a way to mark, and I just don't, honestly, I don't know if there's a way we can say, okay, the kid's on an extended absence, but yet over here, somewhere on the side, mark it Q and be able to pull, or mark it as COVID and be able to pull out a report easily.
I guess I would like to move towards that. I guess I just feel it's nobody's business what illness my kid has besides their doctor, a school nurse.
Just to be
And
clear.
if you have to track it at a government school, then that's what you have to do.
Just to be clear, it would be just the teachers that have that student that see that right now as a Q, and the health office and the admin office.
I don't agree with that.
My only thing is, I agree, Donna, your comments about sending sick kids to school and all that kind of stuff, I know that happens. The difficulty that I have with the whole thing, and I know this has been talked about a million times, is that, even when I had COVID, everybody tried to attribute me to the last person, the last known case, and my exposure to that individual as being the person that gave. I touched 15 door handles and who knows how many shopping carts that particular day, and it's really difficult for me, and so I put an end to that right off the get-go. I'm like, no, you're not going to attribute that, because I think that then that gets into kind of like liability realm, where people start drawing conclusions that somebody was exposed because of this or that, and I'm not quite sure that that's a good spot. As far as what you're talking about, Rob, and a balance between all these things, for now, I like the way that this has been proposed so far with days, parents have a choice. I like that. As far as the coding, I think I'd like to know the answer on whether or not that's tied to CARES funding and all that kind of stuff.
But if we change this policy, who's going to enforce that policy? That's what I guess I want to know before we would move forward with that. Who's going to enforce it?
And again, we don't, with that, it's a small amount of funding. And it could be that we're not going to be capturing that information now. It could be a person that says, my kid's sick, but I'm not going to identify which one.
Oh, like a parent chooses not.
They could choose not to. We don't know that. I mean, it was, basically, the way that the registrar did is she went through and looked for COVID, you know, and if they marked it, she would count it, you know. The funding is not a lot of money.
But that goes back directly to the parent.
We report and then they get EBT money for that.
Right.
So it's a benefit to them, not really. I mean, we get some administration costs, you know. I mean, I want to say it was less than $10,000.
And I think we have to track that to be able to give that reimbursement, isn't that right?
Right.
We're mandated to do that.
Yeah.
So who would enforce it, Art? Like, right now is the way it's written.
Yeah. You know, I can't, and this may be a relatively small number of students too, you know, so again, I wouldn't really expect classroom teachers. Right now, we have some kids choosing to wear a mask, and that's fine, you know, so I don't think this would feel strange, you know,
Right.
because I don't think it would move the number enough that anybody would probably think much of it. You know, I would guess that building administrators, you know, if they knew that a kid had been out for COVID and they were back on day 6 or whatever, and they noticed they didn't have a mask on, they would probably gently remind them they're supposed to have a mask on. You know, I can't say that they would be running around trying to, you know, with a list, trying to determine all day. That's where, you know, where you talked about earlier about families making the choice and trusting our families to abide by it. I think we're going to need to rely on that.
It's going to be a small number, and I think it's going to enforce itself because the families that have been against masks from the beginning will probably choose to do 5 days at home. That's great. It gives them the choice, the freedom of that choice. The families that decide to put their kid back in school 5 more days, I guarantee you're probably going to have a conversation with that student, and it's going to enforce itself. So with that, I make a motion to consider the changes to the Return to Learn plan and adopt the new guidance from the CDC, Iowa Department of Public Health, Warren County Health.
Motion made by Ben to approve,
I'll second it.
seconded by Donna. Any further discussion by the board? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, motion carries 7-0.
So clarification, it's to update the Return to Learn to match Warren County?
Yes, yep, that's fine. And you can say Warren County Iowa Department of Public Health and CDC if you like, because they all are in focus now, are all in agreement. And I had told one of our district nurses that if the board did act on that I would work with them too. They can help update the Return to Learn plan. They can help communicate with parents, so I'll have our district nurses involved in this too.
So, Ray, do you think you can let us know about that coding and stuff?
I can probably find out sometime tomorrow, yeah.
Thanks, Ray. Thanks, Art. All right, next is the HR committee meeting report.
You guys are busy.
Yeah, I went through a lot.
Okay, Mimi pretty much laid this all out for everyone. I don't know, does anyone have any questions about it? Because she really wrote everything we did down here. So there's some staffing shortages that have had very limited applications. I don't know. I mean, right now, the number I just got, there are 1,300 unfilled teacher positions in the state of Iowa right now. And so it's going to be real critical that there are some positions that are going to be hard to find, I think. So are we still having a problem with the staffing shortages, or is that just for associates?
Well, I think the things that have always kind of been problems, having enough substitute teachers, having enough associates, sub-associates, those things that have always been problems have been exacerbated. You know, we've been fortunate in some areas too. You know, some places are really struggling with bus drivers, for example, and we've been pretty fully staffed. Now, I know we have to have our mechanics and our director drive sometimes too and fill in, but You know, we're getting by. I do think we're probably going to see lower numbers of applicants for different positions than we traditionally have. And part of that is just there are fewer students going into teacher prep programs as well. So, nothing really new to report on it, but it does continue to be a concern.
It's just the same, because I know some districts have had to cancel school because they didn't have enough subs because their staff was out sick.
We haven't had to do that. We have, I know the first thing in the morning that principals are doing is checking what openings there are, what's not filled, working with their secretaries, talking with their teachers. We've had elementary principals in classrooms more than ever this year, and pulling from the different areas like we've talked about before, your instructional coaches, your reading teachers. So, as long as we don't get a huge spike, people have really been great about helping out, and we're
lucky that
we're concerned, but we're getting by.
Donna, do you know what,
Okay, I just was, yeah.
do you know what the incentive program is that she was talking about for substitutes?
Yeah.
Well, we talked, for subs in our district, we just had talked about like trying to incentivize people being a reliable sub. So I don't know there was anything definitive discussed, but just.
I can give an example. We talked about almost like a punch card idea. You sub 5 times in this pay period, we'll give you a pay for a 6th day. That's one idea that we talked about.
And we talked about the sub pay, or maybe you did that here, but
Yeah.
it was like 130, but now like Des Moines 160, and
Yeah, we did just increase it, but there are some others who have jumped it up. I had seen ADM, I believe, was one that just increased it quite a bit to like 165 or something. So, that is something I think we'll have to continue to look at. When I first came here, what they did with sub pay was they increased it by the state supplemental aid amount. So if they were making $100 and we got 2% state supplemental aid, the next year it would be 102. And it just seemed like an odd number, first of all. So where we went from there was, every year we looked at it, and sort of like with our student fees, every other year or so we raised it maybe $5. Well, this year we raised it 10, but we may be back, with more of an increase next year if things continue to go the way they are. The other number, which we've not changed for quite a while, was our long-term sub rate, because at $190, that was very competitive for a long time. So that may need to be looked at too. But
as a long-term sub, they don't just go to the base pay then after they've been there?
no, they get $190 a day is what that is, which would, would not be the same as being on the salary schedule. Yeah.
And then she just talked about some positions that were filled. Do we have the math interventionist now? Because it's listed here. Did you see that, Sue, that she had that listed? But we don't have do we have a math interventionist now? We don't, do we, for the elementary, or do we?
That's the position out there.
Yeah, Lauren Wilder. And was that math and reading, or was it just math?
She was going to look at her data, but was determined to go out there due to the reading scores.
Yeah, that was the one that I know we had Sally Van Doren subbing,
Oh, that's what Sally was doing.
and I
Okay.
believe that we hired it. I think Sally was first semester.
I saw her out at Wilder and talked to her, so I knew that she was there.
So
but
I believe we have somebody in that now.
So it's,
Oh, that's right. We actually had a transfer. This is right. It's coming back to me now. We had an experienced teacher willing to transfer to that from Emerson, who's doing that now. And then we backfilled.
backfilled that job?
Yep.
Okay, okay. That's what, so, but in the future, because those funds are only here for, what, another year? And then,
Yeah, well, up to 27 months. A lot of these were kind of, 1 year, 2 year. One reason that worked was I think the time horizon for that person who transferred, she was, pretty close to looking at retirement anyway, so that kind of fit her Or schedule or plan.
Okay, so anyway, I don't know, if you guys have any questions, this is pretty long, so we don't need to go over it
No, you're
piece
fine.
by piece, yeah.
The other one we spent quite a bit of time talking about
Yeah.
was that new job description.
Is that next?
Yep, that's coming up. District-wide behavior strategist.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Before we go down to that, how many associate positions are we down right now?
I don't know that number. I'd have to check with principals. I think we have at least 3 buildings that we have postings in right now, so multiple. And that's kind of a moving target. I know I was just having a weekly meeting with the principal yesterday, and that principal had 2 associates resign right before break. So that was 2 more. So multiple, I don't know the exact number.
I feel like, based on the presentation tonight and looking at the numbers on that list, compared to what I'm seeing when I've been in 3 of the 6 buildings, there's a lot fewer than what it looks like maybe we should have. And so my question is, at this point, we know we've got associates that would like more hours. I understand that we've got the issues with health insurance coverage over the 30-hour minimum. Is there some way that we can accommodate, fill in some of these positions with the staff we have, give them more hours, and have an exemption waiver for the healthcare benefits?
John, maybe you can speak to that.
The issue is, our school day is only 7.5 hours. Or is it?
6.6.
6.5 hours. So when you take a half-hour lunch out of it, there's almost 6 hours. So giving them more hours doesn't really help, because you're already at the full day, in theory, right? So that's been the quandary as to what we do. The way that the master contract states that in a teacher situation, if you are less than half full-time, you can get the benefit of whatever your prorated amount is. So if I'm a 50% teacher, I get half my benefit paid for health insurance. So if they work 30 hours, or 30 to 35, however you identify that, you could say that you could get 75% of your insurance paid for. And then there'd be, some payment that they would have to do. I mean, that's the way that the master contract reads.
Dictated by the master contract.
Right now, because associates and teachers are on the master contract. So that was, when I first came here, that was a big deal. And Ron would say, Jonna, we need more hours. So I said, show it to me. And so when he showed it to me, I said, you already got all the hours. I mean, the associates aren't going to stay longer than the teachers are there. So, because
We have talked about the fact that now that insurance is an illegal topic of bargaining, that really is in the hands of the district, what the district wants to do with insurance. And I know that there's an insurance committee. I know things have been talked about there. We would like to get to the point where we have those prorated benefits available to associates. One mechanism for that we've talked about pretty publicly at different meetings is if we had the base plan that we provide not be the $1,000 deductible plan, but be the high deductible plan that a number of people, increasing numbers, are on anyway.
it's a majority right now.
Because there are a lot of tax advantages to it, and it's a good plan. If we would do that and make that our base plan, the high deductible, there would be several hundreds of thousands of dollars saved that would come close to covering the prorated insurance for associates. So that is something that we put out there. That would be one way to get at what you're talking about.
I guess my thought is, we know we're down associates, we know that there are students that are not probably getting the one-on-one help that they need. From the conversations that I've had as a board member, and I know other board members have had with associates, they're clocking in at the exact time that they need to and clocking out at the exact time that they need to clock out, and they're not having enough time to get their stuff done. They're not invited to the trainings on Wednesday afternoons regularly. So I guess ultimately at the end of the day, my question is, what can we do right now to fill the gap that we have from a one-on-one perspective with the students and allowing our associates to get their workday completed?
We have done quite a bit of study of hours people are working, and I know we were hiring at 27 and a half hours, and then have given permission to go up to 32 or 32 and a half, Jonna?
And even 32 and a half, you know, because we have to do the ACA calculations, and when you put in from August through May, if you put it in, the calculation in, it would be, the average would be at 32 and a half hours, so that's 6.5 hours a day. That would get them, it's 29 hours, or so, 29 hours. I can show you the calculation.
And what percentage, Jonna, of, and you may not, this may be an unfair question, but I know we've talked about it in the past, are most of our associates working the maximum hours they're allowed right now?
I don't know that. I don't know that I can tell you that.
I know we've looked different
We study it
times.
about we look at it quarterly because it gives you a bulk of time to look at, to give you an average. That's kind of where we're at right now, reviewing those as well right now.
I have a question. In those 6 hours, if they work 6 hours a day, is a half hour assumed for their lunch, right? Okay, so they're.
Yeah, well, it's the 6.6 hours, so I mean, you take the half hour lunch out, it's really back to
Yeah,
6.
yeah, I was just, so 8:30 to 2:30, 6 hours, school starts at 8.
8 to 3.
8 to 3 is what you're
roughly.
saying. I know, yeah, I'm just saying.
And there are
Just
associates
knowing
that,
I know.
there are associates that work more hours, in particular our program associates, who are also benefited. You know, they can work up to 40 hours and they have benefits, and then we use them intentionally, like to either meet buses when special ed kids come, or to ride buses.
Right, I know,
And some of those
yeah.
other duties.
So,
But your key point is one that we've talked about before, Mac, and I don't disagree. If we can maximize the hours of the people we have, maybe that helps limit the need for these extra open positions.
Well, yeah, I mean, maybe, but I have a true concern that our students aren't being helped the way that they need to be helped because of the open positions that there are. And I don't want to see the district get in a position where we have parents with students on IEPs that are coming back and saying, you don't have enough associates, my student is not being helped enough, and to come back to the board and say, what are you going to do to fix this? I'd rather be proactive and look at it now.
Well, we're looking at it closely, and I think you heard Sarah say, I love to be compliant, and we, it's the law, and, that's definitely something we're concerned
it's just,
about.
you can't make them stay if they want to quit. And so that's, that's the issue. Is there any way we could say they could work the full day if they just signed off on something and said, we won't ask for your insurance,
I
district
think,
insurance?
I don't know, you have to offer it.
They could decline it, but you don't.
They could decline it. But
They would have to, like right now, we always look to see, because you have to see who qualifies, and we look at that, and it qualifies in a yearly basis, so our measurement period is the year. So if we have several that are over that, for whatever reason, at the end of this year, then next year we would have to offer that to them. In a typical situation, so we hire a teacher right now, they get insurance right away because we know they're working the 40 hours or what.
Right.
So where there are shortages, then could somebody look at those building levels, if there are shortages in that building and we're not able to fulfill them by hiring, could we look at who has enough hours to be able to still bump up and offer it to those associates to fulfill those hours, if there are shortages?
That's probably a Sarah question to see if it's feasible, because she always says you lose so much time traveling, so that would be, she's a really good problem solver.
Time travel.
Between buildings, so if you
Oh,
had
I
to
guess
go
I
from-
mean-
He's talking about maybe within
Same building,
buildings.
same
yeah.
building,
Oh.
yeah. So like, instead of coming in at, I don't know, maybe they come
I
in at
think
9 or
they
leave at 2.
I think
stay
they
in
do
at
some of
12.
that anyway,
Okay.
because it is really tough to get sub-associates, and when somebody is out, I know that the teacher and the associates, they're looking at the day, they're looking at where people need to be to serve kids.
Okay.
There's a lot of, on a daily basis, a lot of problem solving happens on the fly. But I think a more permanent solution obviously is desirable.
it's just a hard thing to do. My niece teaches in West Des Moines special ed, and she said, you can't believe the different associates she's had this year already just for her kids. So it isn't just here. I mean, that's what we have to be clear about. It's not here. It is everywhere. Every school has this problem.
Do we do exit interviews?
I think so. I mean, I've seen, I know we do with teachers. I don't know if we do with associates, but that's a more, kind of more mobile, there's more
Yeah,
churn.
I mean, I never had one quit, so I don't know.
I think that would be a good, thing to implement. And I don't know if that requires, some kind of a different conversation outside of this, but I think that would be good data to get. Because that would help us better understand some of the, maybe some of the reasons, the core reasons. And I understand, in my line of work, we've got people that quit and sometimes they're just frustrated and they say a lot of not so nice things when they're done. But I just think it'd be good to capture that data. To Mac's point, I agree. I had some ideas when I first came on the board that are similar to how my line of work operates, because I deal with learning employees as well, but that's somewhat limited by the master contract.
Yep, I'll put exit interviews on Mimi's radar, and see if there's a way to.
I think too with exit interviews too, do we ever talk to the associates that have been here for 6-10 years, ask them, why are you staying? And figure out what the secret sauce is and who we need to start maybe looking a little harder at, instead of just spinning our wheels on.
There's some, I mean, the ones at Irving, those three were there forever. So I don't, and Whittier had some that were very long-term also.
I would tell you this, just in some of the conversations that I've had, sometimes it's just the level of respect that they receive. Like, are they truly appreciated? And sometimes that just comes down to a management and a relationship. But I think sometimes they feel like they're separate from the teacher staff and however, that probably is a different dynamic for each individual associate and probably each individual relationship in the classroom. But I think that one way to address that, I think, is to make sure that we communicate their value all the way down through the ranks.
And this is a little silly almost, is there advertisement or a demographic that you can try to, not put a commercial together by any means, but some sort of proactive recruitment? I know probably most associates are moms that want to be able to take the kids to school, get the kids after school, and have that, not easy, but we can do that percentage of associates that fit that mold.
Well, when I talk,
Like their kids' schedule.
yeah, when
Reasonable.
when you ask about why are they staying, a lot of them is what you said, is because I have my summers off with my kids and I have the vacation time with my kids and.
So use that,
It's-
I do know we've had
advertisement to go grab more moms.
We've had principals reach out directly to their parents with parent emails, and I know on some occasions they've actually hired associates from the parent ranks. So
Let's address the relationship part of it a little bit, because I taught kindergarten and I had an associate every day from 8:30 to 11:10, and the kids came at 8:10, so I had an associate almost the whole time. When you teach kindergarten, and back when I taught it, every moment of every day wasn't scripted, so as much as it is right now. And so they would come in from recess and have their snack, and then the kids that didn't finish their work, the other kids would get to go have free play. And during that time, I would talk to the associate, or, I tried to develop a relationship because I had the time to do that. But right now, they're so busy, there's nothing anyone can do about it. The associates come in, they're sitting with the kid, but the teacher's busy the entire time, and then they have lunch, and their lunches usually aren't together at the same time.
So there's no time
it's hard to build a
Less
relationship.
time to develop that relationship.
Yeah, it's hard to build a relationship. It is. I had time to do that because, 12 years ago, it was a different time.
And it is a pay issue too. I
And it
mean,
was, it
my-
was, it was a more relaxed pace, yeah. I mean, you know,
Well,
they came in
pay
and,
issue. So my daughter was an associate in Springfield. She came back here and she made more money in Walmart than she did as an associate.
Right.
And in her opinion, it was less stressful, you know, I mean, so
yeah, it is.
that's another, I agree with the way that Mimi wrote it, that this is experiencing some of the same shortages that all the other industries are as well, and I recognize that. But I think that we need to gather data in order to know the scope of the problem, in order to create a strategy to try to address it ahead of all the other schools that have the same problem.
Well, I know that Mimi, I think, and Sarah are working on a survey out to the associates with just a few targeted questions, and to the teachers as well, on the different things we've talked about here. And I think that Mimi and Sarah both have a very good relationship with their teachers and their staff, so I think probably the results will be well thought out answers, and maybe that'll help guide us.
I'm glad that you guys are talking about it, Donna. I think it's a good report.
It's a great report.
So,
Anything else with HR? No. Okay.
I think so.
We'll move on to the district behavior strategist, which would be a new position. So that's why it's brought before the board then.
Right, it's a new job description, new description. It's been talked about in different ways for a while. This is something that really has come to the forefront. I would say we've done a very good job as a district with our continuum of services for special education and made some really positive changes. Feel good about that. We are seeing increasing numbers of students who aren't necessarily identified as special education students who still have behavior needs. That's one little part of this. And the other thing that we've heard come up different times is just having somebody with an expert focus and background to help do training. Again, to speak to Donna's comment about the busyness of teachers, couldn't agree more. And they want to do a good job with these kids that come to school. Many times they've had adverse childhood experiences, or they just there's so much going on that they struggle to come and function.
What's the percentage in this job description that they will be hands-on with kids versus the training? Is that training with teachers, or, I mean, is this is majority hands-on with our students, right? They're not gonna be
I'm not sure I'd say that. You see behavior support for individual students bulleted there. But I think there'd be a pretty heavy training component of this.
to teachers?
Yeah, two teachers.
Where would they be located? What building?
We'd make that a data-driven decision like we did with the interventionist. I think there's probably a pretty high likelihood that it would be Lower Ingalls Wilder, just because of the programs we have there and the space we have to house somebody. But it would be but they would serve.
That would
yeah.
make the most sense to
Yep,
me.
they would
That's what-
serve other buildings.
Yeah.
So are they seeking out the teachers, or are the teachers seeking them out, this person out then for help, or?
I think it could go either way. I think, those, the students that are struggling this way are definitely known, because they're struggling to function. They need behavior support. So that the principals are going to be very aware of who those students are. The classroom teachers are going to be aware. I think it's a two-way street in terms of this person may say, Rob, I know that we have a student with a new behavior plan. I know you have this kid in your classroom. I'd like to talk with you about how you can support this student, and if you're having questions, likewise, it could be I would say in the case of a student who isn't identified for behavior yet, but is really struggling, the classroom teacher is probably going to know first. And what would be traditionally they're probably going to the principal and saying, what can I do? I'm trying. I feel like I've tried everything. Well, this would be another person that probably has knowledge and expertise beyond the principal even. Okay. Principals we expect to be pretty well versed and everything that goes on in their building, whether it's curriculum, special education, whatever. But I'll say, again, I'll just use myself as an example. Okay, I have a decent understanding of special education law. I haven't been a special education teacher like Sarah. I haven't been an at-risk coordinator like Sarah was. And she brings knowledge to it that it's much more specialized and deeper than mine is. This person would be a great resource for teachers and principals in the building. There would be some modeling and direct work with students undoubtedly. And we've talked about how they could be another person kind of on deck. I can tell you right now, I know when something comes up, particularly if we have a principal out of the district, Sarah's running out to buildings. It'd be nice if we had a behavior interventionist in addition to that. Do you want to add anything, Mr. Ron? Am I doing a decent job explaining this? Or?
Can I see the job description?
I would also say that this mimics or aligns with the feedback that they were getting from the teachers through the teacher leadership compensation survey in needing supports with students that have significant needs. And so, because there has been such a change in those types of behaviors that are coming in, and oftentimes the intensive team that we can get from the AEA, that could be a 6 to 8 week wait time to have that intensive behavioral team come in to be able to provide those types of supports. So this would be a person who could spend time with teachers in the classrooms, doing that training and actually onboarding students and helping them to understand those plans, as Art was saying, because there isn't time outside of the school day to go do that. So it could be real-time action, and then also observing, being there and to be a support to say, okay, now I've observed the teacher and the associates react to the situation. Is it being functional, or how can we support them with changes to make it even more effective? Because sometimes you need a set of eyes there that really isn't involved in the action at that time too. So that's why we discussed this for several years as far as that priority level, but it is really matching up even more so, I think, from when we look at the school closures and additional students moving it back into the school settings. They have those emotional needs too.
They can come in the room, observe, make recommendations. Speaking to Sue's point of being in the room or with the kids or whatever they're doing, they can be in the room, write up, make suggestions, that kind of thing. What would be the qualifications that we're going to advertise as? What do they need? A special ed degree, a behavior? I mean, is there a behavior?
It's at the bottom.
It's a math, it's down on their essential skills.
Okay, sorry, I didn't see all that.
They report to Annette, to you.
Actually, at the top, they have them reporting to Sarah Baker as the Director of Special Programs, and then I evaluate Sarah and kind of oversee that part too for alignment. But I will say that through the network where I get other information and trainings and things, there is, for example, another company out of another state who are starting to offer certifications in behavioral intervention.
That's what I
Because
wondered.
across the nation, this is becoming kind of a specialized field where we know they need more people, just like we saw within the last 10 years of needing more mental health therapists. So kind of in the line of the same approach.
So this person would mainly be in the classrooms. Much of their day is going to be spent in the classroom, kind of like what you had said, working with the teacher and that student, trying to.
Probably in IEP meetings,
Yeah.
perhaps even also working with parents.
Yeah.
Well, and the
Students,
associates,
too.
I mean, maybe the associates also, I think we need to be included.
Yeah.
Currently, obviously, we have these kids in the school, these behavior. So it's kind of like, right now, we have the issue. Principals would be the one that teachers to reach out to right now. I mean, so, so it's kind of to me, a no-brainer. Obviously, it's something that's probably kind of up and coming all around. The other schools are identifying this.
So each building has kind of their crisis response plan that they would do if a student really is in crisis and how they respond to that. But you can also, there's a cycle that they study where a student starts to escalate, and we want to catch them before they get at the top of their
Yeah.
crisis moment. And so with that, a person in this type of a role could be there and be able to respond at this level to try to prevent them
Yeah.
from peaking. And they also can be there during the de-escalation phase too, but it's that training part of helping associates and teachers understand those signals from the student as to when they're starting to accelerate, but also what other just types of safety and emotional needs they have. That can be hard when you hear at the end of the day, you're going to have a new student tomorrow, right? They're moving in now because we legally need to be serving students, and this would also then help have plans in place more immediately so the teacher and associates in those particular needs. And it might not always be a special education room, as Art said. There are other students who might not be identified yet through special education that also have needs or moved in, and that transition period is hard for them, so.
Yeah, it was just the point I was gonna make is right now, we kind of have this issue going on everywhere, every school. And the process right now is maybe principals, those who may not be nearly as qualified as this person, so bringing somebody in is just a great idea to offset the principal, role in that scenario and bring more knowledge and experience in that. So I think it's I think this person might be the easiest person in the district. Right. Honestly. That's a great idea. Two of them.
Is this an immediate start, or is this gonna be a start at the beginning of the 2022, 2023?
That's a great question. I think from a practical standpoint, it will probably end up being a next year deal just because of the kind of people you want are going to be under contract. I think we're trying to kind of baby step this. We know when it's a new position, even though it's been a need for a while, we've just gotten to the point where we've had kind of a coherent job description, and we've been communicating with some other districts who have this kind of person. There's give and take always with budget. We don't just add a bunch of nice to haves, and this year too, especially with the slight enrollment decline we had, if we didn't think it was really important, we wouldn't bring it for next year. But I think most likely it is a next year hire. We do some mid-year hires at times, and then there's some other positions that are a little bit different when it's an ongoing need, but you're not necessarily going to be on a teaching contract, like maybe an IT position or something, where we'll hire whenever we can get them, or we'll temp it. But with a teaching position, since we're already in the second semester, I would see it probably being a next year thing.
Is this an action?
Yes.
Yeah, because it's a new position, we need you to approve the job description and give us the freedom to pursue this person when we can get it.
So we need a motion if you guys.
I'll make a motion that we approve the discipline behavior strategist with the definition there and the job description.
Motion made by Sue to approve. Seconded by Ryan. Any further discussion by the board? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries 7-0. Next is the monthly.
This says, technology.
No, nothing on just
Nothing on technology.
Can I ask a question about technology?
Yeah.
Ray, are we set to roll out the Chromebooks this week to the elementary, right?
We are starting with 4th and 5th grade this week.
Okay.
Actually, we started with Emerson.
Okay.
And then tomorrow is Laura Ingalls Wilder and Whittier for 4th and 5th grade tomorrow.
Okay.
And then Irving, I believe, is on Thursday.
Did we get, from a staffing perspective with you, did we get a position filled to help you with these new 1,600
That is one of our
Chromebooks that are going out in the week?
Well, depends on which of the two positions you're talking about. So we had the tech integration position advertised, and we weren't able to fill that one at all, which kind of is like this other position that Art was talking about. It's probably just the time of year.
Okay.
So we're advertising that one again, and now that'll, quite honestly, I don't look for that one to be filled until next year. And then for the IT support specialist position, we had that filled for a couple months, maybe, and then that's now opened up again, and I'm having a very hard time finding somebody to fill that, so we've re-advertised.
Which one is that again?
That's the IT support specialist. So we had somebody short term, as it turned out, We've reached out to a temp agency that we've used many times. Not having good luck there either. They're saying the market's pretty tight. So.
So we're not properly ready to help you with these 1,600 Chromebooks that are going
Just
out.
doing everything we can. So
Okay, darn it.
let's see how it goes.
And there's no, like, we can't pull people that are like interns at Simpson and they could do an internship with us or something like that are in that degree.
I know Simpson utilizes a lot of their own people for that.
Yeah.
It's something we can certainly look into, but I do know they utilize a lot of their students and their help desk.
Okay.
So we've re-advertised. We'll see. I even reached out to a person who had applied for a different position. It was similar. So we'll see.
Good luck.
Hopefully it goes well. So.
If it don't go well, I'm just worried about your staff and being swamped.
He's still smiling.
They're a good bunch of guys and gals. They really work hard.
I don't want to reinvent the wheel here, I'm still the new guy, but with as many openings as we have, would it be possible for us to get a list at each meeting of what open positions the district has
Oh, sure. Yeah.
in the packet?
Yeah, we could probably incorporate that in the personnel recommendations, yeah.
Thank you.
All right, monthly financials.
Looking at November here, you can kind of see that, we do see a big jump in the general fund from one to the next. I went and looked at that because it is high, but it's mainly property tax and state aid. Those are the two pieces that they are in the
From
difference.
October.
As well as COVID money, other than that, you can kind of see increases like activity fund has, interestingly enough, the activity fund held its own through the whole pandemic because their revenue matched they had reduced revenue, they had reduced expense, so they held their own very, very well. So they're seeing a little bit of an increase here. Management, we're just, holding our own now as we look at possibly in the future, if you'd ever do another early retirement of some kind, it's holding for that. Pearl, we're just holding, for the next either playground or if, we look at a community support person, a community ed person. That was one of the things that Ken had talked about. And then the next two funds, obviously, the sales tax and PEPL are being used for the auxiliary services building, so they have nice balances, but they will be depleted quickly once that building gets built. Debt service manages our debt, and then the food service, if you look, both food service and childcare have benefited from COVID. Food service, because it's an increased per meal revenue that will receive for that. And for childcare, it is, that we have backfilled some of their, expenses to reimburse them because they were open the whole time. We were the only metro school, if we call us metro, I don't even call us metro, but that was open for childcare. So they've been able to maintain and be healthy right now. And our self-insurance fund, our self-funded insurance, continues to maintain right now. The last couple of months, we've seen a little bit of what we brought in is what we're spending, which has not been what it's been all the time because we've been able to increase that. So that's been interesting as well. Any questions?
I might have asked this before. Do we have any negative balances in the nutrition fund?
We do. I plan on bringing that to finance because one of the things that we talked about more than once on the board last year was there's a flex fund. We have different funds that have balances that can be used to offset those. We have about 30-some thousand of negative balances. And of that, about 15 make up most of them. 15 people, 15 families, or less, 10 maybe. But we've talked about possibly cleaning that out, starting over, because in talking with the food service director, do you really think they're going to ask for to pay for meals now that they've not for 2 years? maybe I'm wrong, I don't know that they will. I think that it'll just be part of the school thing, so that we'll pay. And they'll keep the reimbursements the same, my guess. But that's what we will be talking about, to process to get through that, so we can transfer those funds from, it'd be the general fund to the food service. But yeah, it's about 35,000.
It would be nice to get that off our audit. We've had it as a negative audit comment
Yeah.
several years, even though we've really worked hard and chipped away.
76,000 was what it started out.
Yeah, so I mean, it's less than half of what it was, and people, we've had some generous donations toward that too.
So yes, and we'll talk about that, so thanks, Mac. Then the next one are the 4 areas that you watch as a board member to make sure that we are not over. You know, and basically November is just under 42% of our budget. And the line item that's in support, if you'll notice, that would be like, it'd be guidance counselors, but it'd also be our custodians, our facilities, all those pieces are in that support services line item. Other than that, you know, we're tracking well. That's the one I'm kind of watching to see where that goes. But as long as statutorily overall, you can't go over 100% at the end of the year, and you're good. You can go over one area as long as you don't go up overall. So goal is not over any. So, and then the cash flow, just the graph that shows the health of, you know, as we're gaining the cash right now.
Just shows up on a separate
Obviously, we're healthy, I guess, is what I should say. So, questions?
Move to approve the monthly November 2021 financial reports.
Motion made by Ben to approve. Seconded by Mac. Any further discussion by the board? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries 7-0. And the last one is the 2022-2023 modified supplemental amount dropout at risk.
Yeah, you see that on the packet.
Page 63 of it.
So you can see we have 6 areas where we focus our funds for the at-risk program. What we have to do through the state process is request the modified supplemental amount is what they call it. So that 1.255511 is what that funds those areas, or mostly funds those areas. So
you need a motion
Yeah.
for that amount, yeah.
I'll make a motion to approve the 2022-23 modified supplemental amount of $1,255,511 for dropout prevention application.
Motion made by Sue. Seconded by Mac. Further discussion by the board. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries, or any opposed? Motion carries 6-0.
I'm gonna oppose it, just.
We finally have one. Board, Finance Committee meeting. Which was, yeah.
It's exciting stuff, I know, right?
I'm refreshing my memory.
We'll go down 1% next year, right? Is that right?
Well, depends on, again, I'll let those guys talk and then I'll.
Okay, I knew that.
We'll see if they
When
listen.
I was on finance, that's what we were worried about, so I'm just asking. But if something's changed, that's great.
Do either of you guys want to take it, or?
It doesn't make any difference. Whatever you want to do, I can do it.
Yeah.
We did briefly touch on the conference, December. That was actually one of the things I wanted to follow up on tonight, find out if we knew what that's gonna look like yet, or when is that?
We don't. The legislature is supposed to set state supplemental aid within 30 days of the governor's budget. We have heard that it shouldn't be delayed this year, so I would guess probably sometime February, maybe even early
I hope so.
February.
Budget enrollment projections, we talked a little bit about that decreasing a little bit. The graph that you see there was similar sized schools. The one thing that we did point out is, we're right in line with a few of the Des Moines metro schools as far as enrollment goes in comparison to what it had been. There was a second graph, wasn't there, with previous data on it that we looked at in that committee meeting?
I just pulled, I don't think I put both of those on there that just shows the graph, the 10 up, 10 down. So that's our comparison group, and then that, I don't have that, Mac, I can look.
Okay. And then John has shared some updates for the budget with PEPL and SAVE funds.
And if you go to the next, so if you go down, Ray, to the next one, that one, and just shrink it a little bit. So what Donna's question is are we going to be at a budget guarantee? And so the budget guarantee, so we went down, we thought it was 2.5, we're about 2.4 kids, or 1.4 kids now. So we need at least 1.05% to not be on the budget guarantee. And if we got on the budget guarantee at 1.04, and then next year we declined, then that's when it would hurt.
That's what hurt the most. That's
And it doesn't help that we're at 1%, but I mean, but again, Art and I have talked that it should, in theory, be more than that because the district or the state is very, very healthy. All the reserves are full. I mean, that's kind of what the Revenue Estimating Committee talked about. So we'll see what that does. But this kind of gives, and this is a very, very conservative, out 5 years, 24 through 27 after that current year that we're estimating. I only put in 1% just to see what the worst case scenario is, kind of. But, and as you look at the bottom, if it's just 1% each year, it's still, if you go to the bottom line, it goes, it does increase, a couple, to 2% versus,
And those are the wild cards every year that are just kind of tough to predict. You don't know what you're going to get for state supplemental aid. You don't know what your enrollment's going to be, and that's pretty much what drives your budget. So.
And what percent they give us for this, teachers isn't count.
Yeah, and then the bargaining, I guess, has gotten more predictable a little bit with some of the collective bargaining rules, but if you would go to arbitration now, that's more determined. That's going to be either 3% or the average inflation rate, which of course, it's just gone bonkers for everybody. So, but our opener, we have a contract reopening threshold in our contract. We're settled through June 30th of 2023.
next year.
But if we have state supplemental aid that is below 1% or above 3%, then that's a trigger to reopen the contract and negotiate. So I don't think we'll be below 1% this year. Some people, the money is there, that it could be above 3%, but history does not tell us that it will be. So we'll just have to wait and
So
see.
if it's 3%, we still wouldn't have to reopen.
We would not reopen at 3%. It's above 3%, yeah.
Yeah, that we don't have to open, right? Yeah. Okay.
When do we open bargaining again? When does that actually?
Next school year, you'll be bargaining for the 23-24 school year.
This time next school year, probably?
Yeah, usually initial offers happen around February.
Okay.
And then, the goal, at least my goal has always been, get it settled before school's out. It's nice to have contracts in hand.
Right. Right.
everybody know where they're gonna be at before they go out for the summer.
My goal is March 15th.
March 15th is the earliest you can do it,
That's my
so.
goal.
Usually
Now,
April's about as long as you.
Now, this year, knowing, assuming we don't have to reopen, this year, knowing that it'll be a 2.2% increase next year, there's no reason we can't.
We have insurance, that we calculate.
Right.
We can calculate, yeah.
But, I can't remember where our March board meetings fall, but,
I think they're before and after break, spring break.
okay, so you wouldn't be able to approve contracts on the first meeting anyway. So then the 22nd, you could approve them and get them out shortly after. So,
What's the earliest we can start that process?
March 15th is the earliest you can issue the contracts.
But the process.
The bargaining process, I'm not sure there's really, it's more, you have to declare impasse if you haven't done something by this date than it is saying you couldn't start earlier. It's just.
Kind of want to know that year's state supplemental.
You want to kind of, that
Have as
kind of
much
sets,
information
gives you
as
the
you can.
parameters, right?
Yeah, you do, I mean, you want to know.
What it is, yeah.
Usually we don't get, the initial offer comes from the bargaining unit, from the association. We don't usually get that until early February. Sometimes they want to wait and kind of see what some initial, how things are trending in the state. So, yeah, the timing of it, if the association came and wanted to start talking early, there's nothing that says we couldn't, but we don't usually get that initial offer till early February usually. So.
I'll make a motion to approve financials.
Well, you don't have to do for the finance committee.
Oh, we're the
We don't have
finance
to-
committee. We've already approved the financials,
Yeah,
yeah.
we can just, if we're good, we can move on, or, okay, we can move on to facilities.
Facilities. Well, we talked solar power, and apparently that's Tim's second language. So I'm gonna let Tim take this report.
So Mr. Brook invited Chris, I think that's French last name. He's the general manager from IMU. He kind of talked about, the fact that solar energy is continuously, it's outdated about every 6 months. They're continuing trying to refine it. Hard to know when you jump in, hard to know. It's something that you need to know a lot of information on before you start making purchases. Some of the conversation that we had was, are we trying to augment or are we trying to do a full energy replacement? There was a lot of discussion about, the potential of doing an augmented solar as part of the auxiliary building. I think that what was moved out on that was to inquire with the builder or the design company.
Architects.
The architect, whether or not the building would support something like that. There was discussion about even the potential right out here of sticking some panels, just to, I guess.
Jimmy Carter did his solar farm.
Really?
Yeah.
My position on it was that, I just think we need to dip our toes in. I think we need to start exploring it. I think I can tell you from my full-time job that having at least some kind of a predictable backup is, if not the ability to flip a switch and still have your own power, is kind of the direction that people are going for planning, at least. And so I think, I didn't know that we were, that the school district was particularly pursuing solar, but I think it is a good idea. And I think that it is a good idea to pursue it on maybe either this building as an augmented power or the auxiliary services building, I think is a good place to start.
I asked that question too, because I was on finance.
Did we have a chance to reach out to Envision?
I have, and they
Okay,
went,
response.
we'll
Too
get back
late.
to you.
Oh, we'll get back
That's
to you.
exactly, were you on that email? And
I don't think I was, but
I think that we need to get back to you.
we do, we have a new house going up on my street right in the corner there. I see they were putting solar panels up today. Yeah.
I would, if the board is interested, I can set up a tour for any parties that would be interested out to Camp Dodge that would speak to the spot that they recently added, and then I believe that they're pursuing a couple of other banks of panels, and maybe what their idea is and how that might translate. John also talked about, I think you were going to reach out and see if there were any other schools that had already kind of dipped their toes in, and we had talked about a possible tour to there, or, and I think those are good. I think those are good next steps either way. I do not believe, this is what my concern was if we talked to Envision. I think it's still a question that needed to be asked, but my fear was that they would go into a design phase and there would be money attached to designing what it would look like. And I didn't really want to see all kinds of money go down that path, because I personally believe that, starting maybe smaller and having it on the ground from the maintenance piece, that was the other piece that was talked about, was the maintenance. This falls on building and grounds personnel to maintain it. You got to get the snow off the solar panels. You got to dust them about once a month to make sure that the receptacles are pulling the sun's rays in to get maximum benefit. And so, having it on the ground as opposed to having it up on the building seems to me like the right way to go, but I don't.
I've seen a couple of them.
Bernie didn't seem too concerned about additional load on his staff that way. He was comfortable with it.
He was just practical in saying that, it's not gonna trump moving the snow.
Right.
Or something.
The parking lot's still
lot's gonna be
good.
cleared
Well,
for
we don't, won't be
spring.
working if it's snowing anyway, because we won't be in the sun.
Yeah, so we just had a nice conversation about that. Then the auditorium is 98% complete. I did see just a spot in the back where the panels are missing, but it was awesome.
Carpet all down, because when I was there, the carpet wasn't all down yet. So the carpet's.
Yep, and
down.
the guidance lights,
Oh, those
Oh, they're all down
each side
too,
of
'cause
the-
they weren't.
yep, those are all down.
Doing the lobby carpeting right now, supposed to be done.
I saw that,
tomorrow.
they were doing the
Yeah.
lobby.
Yeah, so, the other thing that we, Ben and I and Ken toured, was that, I don't even know how long ago it was, but remember we came back to the board about the seclusion rooms? And how we really needed to, create a few at Wilder. So the one is underway where it's got the, they took a classroom and actually made 2 rooms in that spot. And so the people came in and, they paneled the whole thing there, and then we did some repairs in the paneling at middle school, just because one of the habits tend to be just picking, and so that needed to be repaired. So I know that Bernie is very good too, if any of you guys want to call him and ask for a tour of any of the seclusions or the auditorium and all that, he says to just make sure you guys know that that's always an option too, but those rooms look really, really good. And then, he says there's some painting going on randomly here and there when they can get in there, kind of on the by the north gym doors. It's like, it's this, didn't we decide it was this silver or this gray or something?
They're doing a gray.
Yeah.
Which matches the Pantone at the middle school. Is that right, Jonna? Is that what we decided? Okay.
That's what he said.
Yeah.
Okay.
I asked him if it was the gray over there, and he said, no.
No, he says it's something.
It was heavy solar is what it was.
Yes, it
Discussion
was almost
pretty
an
much heavy
hour
solar,
of
yeah.
solar. And Chris from the city did a really good job to explain where their part would have to come into all of this too. He says there's 18 homes right now in town that have gone the solar route, but he believes there's still just the augmented, not like full reliance.
It sounded like really the only notable kind of industrial or like school project you mentioned was at Simpson.
Yeah, the
Kent Center,
Kent
yeah.
Center, that's right.
Kent Center.
Yeah, that's right.
I think the interesting thing that came out of it was that at the very end, he started talking about
making sure that whatever system we went with and whatever components we used didn't disrupt the energy that IMU provided. And, you know, but he has a program already out here that IMU is doing. And so, in my opinion, they ought to be able to provide some front side advisement for something that's not going to interrupt, because they're already building a bank. So
Yeah, I
you
think-
never want to go out and buy something that would, quote, interrupt the energy. And I just, you know, afterwards I was like, well, we ought to be able to go out and tour your facility, because your facility clearly wouldn't be interrupting.
I think he's just being a little careful because of that, the wholesale energy agreement and the fact that this would be a three-way agreement, you know.
Because we are the number 2 user of energy in the town. That should
Say
be
number
mentioned.
one, I'm assuming.
Hey, we've cut down this year considerably.
Anything else on the facilities project
Sister
update?
has solar.
Probably not a lot on the update, other than just kind of that timeline of the auxiliary services building that our next January board meeting we're hoping to have. Yeah, you know, and we haven't yet seen the budget estimate, but there's that has just recently come to Envision, and they're taking a close look at it. But you know, it's pretty tough time for budget and materials. So there's, you know, we've got we're on pins and needles a little bit to see what we hear.
And you know, part of it, if you know, review the PEPAL and the SAVE budgets, you'll see that what they told us was 4 to 6 million, and I'm proving that there's more there in case we need that. So, but that's always been what they focus on, is the 4 to 6 million. So, and I wanted to make sure we had 6, but I think we have more than that right now. But
of course, there's all kinds of demands and on that too. So you know, we definitely like to avoid the situation where we're spending every last penny. I know when I first came here and we were doing all that work, you know, we had a $29 million bond, and then we had another $2.2 million budgeted in our Save and PEPAL for basically for cost overruns or for extras we wanted. And I think we even spent a little bit beyond that. And we had 1 year we actually went negative on PEPAL for a little while. Probably right before cash-wise.
Yeah.
But we had a couple of years there where we were pretty much spending everything we had in PEPAL and SAVE.
That was the first year I was here, thank you.
Yeah.
I was like,
Well, I didn't pass the bond issue and decide to, but that was budgeted before I came too, but I just got to share the bad news with you. But yeah, we hope not to get back in that spot again where there's just nothing left in those funds, so.
All right.
Yeah.
Next is the board calendar.
Reminder of tomorrow night's event for those of you who can make it. I think you're registered if you indicated you can make it.
It's Ryan and myself. And
Sue's gonna come late.
Late, yeah, because I got pantry.
Mac.
No, Mac was a no, Donna was a no, Tim was a no, yeah.
Tell me you're going someplace warm.
if something changes, they will let you come.
We are at
Lake Fieldhouse multipurpose room.
multi-purpose room.
Yep.
Wakefield House. Okay.
Starting out at your house.
Wakefield House multi-purpose room soon.
What?
That's where it's at tomorrow.
Okay. So, and it'll be, pantry opens at 6, so if I can get it started, it'll be 6:30, 6:45.
It's just get there when you can, that's fine.
My question is are you guys wanting to try to do a work session here? So, to the board,
Well,
we got some things that we've said that we would discuss. We had things that, you know, to see kind of how you guys are wanting
So
to.
February
move.
1st, well, no, we don't have to be at that meeting.
we don't have to be at the first and the,
But remember, we do have our schedule for the superintendent search.
I tried to, you know, right,
is that in here?
it isn't in here because I don't have enough on the page. So, the first time we have to meet, I think I sent that, he sent that out, didn't he? Did you guys get the calendar? I can send it out again. The first one would be after the 8th. So the 8th is a meeting where that might be a long meeting because I think they're coming to talk about things, and that's just a regular meeting. Because they'll talk about the first and the third interviews and the input meetings.
And is that all open meeting?
Pardon me?
That's all, like,
That's open.
that's an open meeting, it is.
Because
February 8th.
those input meetings are the week before, right?
On the first and the third, right. I didn't put those on because they don't affect you guys, so.
I'm gone February 21st to the 28th, so.
And I'm gone the 11th through the 20th.
And he said the week before, the week right before spring break would be his goal where we would need to be available more often.
Right.
For the interviews, like the week before spring break.
Yeah, so that's not
That's
so
why I'm
much.
going before.
Right.
Right, but I'm just saying, if we've got pockets of people gone here and there, maybe we look for, maybe we look at doing it like,
We could do it in February. And when are you gone? What'd you say, from the 10th?
The Friday, the 11th through the following Thursday. I said the 20th, but that's work. I'm not going back till the following week.
Okay.
And then you're gone when?
21st to the 28th.
You want to do that in March?
well, what if we did it like the week of, like March 1st, 2nd, or 3rd?
March 1st is a Tuesday.
March 1st, yes, is a Tuesday, so we wouldn't normally have it's not normal, a normal meeting, is it?
But if that's
Is that
the
when-
night of the,
That might be I didn't bring that in here.
that February 1st.
I know.
March 1st.
March 1st, oh, March 1st.
Yeah,
No,
March 1st, I think we're okay,
I think we're okay, I think it's the,
But I'll double check.
Can we
that.
tentatively just schedule a March 1st work session? Just like
Yeah.
5:30 to 7:30?
Send you like our thoughts
Yeah,
and
Ben's
topics
not
again.
here.
Sure.
Okay.
5:30 to 7:30, Sue, is that what you said?
5:30 to
I'm
7:30?
not going anywhere till here. So he's-
That's
March-
Tuesday.
March 1st
Yes.
is our 5 o'clock Board of Education meeting.
And that should be,
Does it already have it on that?
Well, it's got a special board meeting on there.
So that would be.
Is that with your
I think I
search
tried to
firm?
put it on there, right?
Okay.
That's with our search firm?
Yeah,
That's what I thought.
that's the meet the school and community chairs before the meeting, review the candidates, select finalists, that'll be a long night.
I'm more than happy to do a work session whenever you want, but I would just say to be considerate to yourselves. You have these extra search firm meetings, and I think your superintendent hire should be kind of your lead priority right now.
when is that over,
Yeah.
Jonah? What,
Spring break, if everything goes well, spring break.
when's spring break?
14th or week of the
Or the,
So what about later in March?
Maybe we just table it.
let's just.
We'll just
table it
wait
and
for
see what
that
happens.
until we
Let's
get
just
through
wait.
it.
I think Art's
Art
right,
has
yeah.
pretty good advice.
Okay.
We
we'll
don't,
wait.
our search committee could come back and need us 3 other days.
Yeah.
How long do
Yeah,
those
I know,
work
I just,
sessions typically last?
Two.
2.5 hours.
It's
They can be as long as you want it.
leave it.
What we've done is typically just had kind of a sack lunch from food service here by 5. People filter in when they get here. We kind of work from 5:30 to 7:30, 8 at the latest.
It's mainly just our goals, but if we're gonna be setting kind of goals and thoughts on other things,
Kind of
do
depends
you
what
do
you have
that
on the
before the
agenda
super?
too.
Does it make sense for a board to set our next year's goals and all that without a superintendent present?
I'm hoping our goals will automatically align.
Yeah,
I mean, what would you feel like if your board met a month before or 2 months before you came on board?
I typically with boards, to me, it's preferable to set your board goals in the fall.
Okay.
And then, try to achieve them throughout the year. The other thing besides just annual goals is, really we're due for a refresh of the strategic plan and long-term goals. And that, I think it may make sense to hit the pause button.
What about some of these issues that we know are gonna rear its face that we've been putting off? Do you feel like we need, that's what some of this board meeting was
Yeah.
more, do you feel like we need to be proactive and have a?
I think that's up to you. First of all, the board you're in control of your agenda and what you take up or don't take up and how you want to proceed with it. Now, I know there are topics of interest, obviously, locally, that people are kind of waiting And the board has said, prior to the election, we're gonna have new board members, we're gonna wait.
Now we have to find a superintendent, so now we gotta push that back too again.
And you didn't know that at that time, and I didn't know it for sure at that time either, so.
Say we hold off then until.
I think, I mean, as a board, and you new members, when I met with you, one of the things I talked about is, one of probably the most important thing you do as board members is hire a superintendent. And at that time, I know I said to you, that's gonna happen sometime during your term. Well, it's happening, sooner rather than later in your term.
Initiation by fire.
But,
Oh, I know, I think that's us.
Better than COVID.
but I would
COVID and
stay pretty
superintendent.
focused on that if you
Yeah,
could.
COVID, you
So we can revisit this in a couple board meetings. and
Right.
talk
Now,
about
let's
it.
table,
That's fine. I think, see how the search thing goes, see how our facility, we've got that building project going, see how some of those things go the
Okay,
coming month, and then we can schedule it.
that's good advice, thank you. Okay,
Anything else? I think that's, waiting for Matt.
What's that, sir?
make a motion.
Oh, are you ready to go?
You're in the seat.
You're in the memorial
You're in the
campus.
seat. You're not, you're in the seat.
Move to adjourn.
Motion made by Matt to adjourn, seconded by Ryan. Oh, who's fast? That was good. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
You're adjourned.
Yeah, 20 minutes to go walk. I'm gonna pick my kid up.